Welcome to the Boba Joe Show.
Welcome, everybody. I'm ready to be taken to school again for the second week in a row here. Ready
get
to learn
detention,
something new.
Stay behind after school.
I'm ready to sit under Johnny's learning tree and
I heard you at the
acquire
back of
some
the
knowledge.
class telling bad jokes and scribbling all sorts of naughty things on the books.
Oh, look, I went out to the toilets, but when I came back, I smelled like smoke. You're going to call my parents.
It's a complete rumor that the old school burned down when you're in the bathroom. Didn't happen.
No, I hope everybody's doing well out there in internet land. And yeah, we're back again for Boba Joe's show. Last week I was learning about the Franco-Belgian comics of Asterix and Tintin, and then coincidentally enough, I was had to go into the vets with my cat a few days ago, and there was a young, I would say maybe like late teens, early 20s person with an Asterix t-shirt, and I was like, that's a cool t-shirt. But you know, hey, look, it's not just old fogies who are into this type of stuff.
Yeah.
The youth are still finding
Was
this
it
stuff,
some
so that's
French
good.
person with a baguette and a cigarette who was laying at a cafe saying, "Do not talk to me, go away."
Yeah, so we're talking Hellboy this week.
Yeah, we've got a double. We've got a twofer. We've got a Hellboy and an Astro Boy. So a bit of half and half. But more comic book topics anyhow.
Yeah, Hellboy, I would say I know a teeny tiny bit about, whereas Astro Boy, I would say even a minuscule, a micro teeny, even tiny teenier bit. So yeah, it's going to be all new for me.
I knew nothing about Astro Boy before I came to Australia because I didn't know he was. They had a show here in 1980 that was quite popular and well known. So quite a few people of my generation who grew up here, which I didn't, but have seen that show as a kid, and it was around in the rental market even like 2002, 2003, I think it was, but like I rented at local shops. But yeah, we'll get into that later. First up is Hellboy, who goes back to 1993 at the old comic shop and Dark Horse Comics, who used to publish our beloved Aliens and Predator, as well as other cool licensed comics. And I was not a Hellboy comic through the 90s. I was too busy reading things like Spider-Mans and Batmans and X-Men. But I was aware of them because I would go to the comic shop and you would see like Previews magazine or comic shop news, or sometimes an actual Dark Horse, what Dark Horse Presents or whatever, which is like Marvel Comics Presents with short stories and stuff. Hellboy had lots of short stories through the 90s and wasn't like I wouldn't say he was a super popular character outside of the kind of hardcore comic book crowd or people that are into more alternative stuff or people like horror things. And he's not as well known as a Spider-Man or Superman. But then post-year 2000, he had some movies with old Mignola was a guy who created Hellboy, Del Toro, Guillermo Del Toro, and what's his face, Ron Perlman, that were in the movies. And I knew Ron Perlman, of course, like he's in like Sons of Anarchy, like that bloody Beauty and the Beast show back in the 80s, and he's just like an awesome actor or kind of jobber who's in all these like B movies through the years, some really dodgy movies and shit. But I've always liked him, and I thought it was pretty awesome as Hellboy. So those movies kind of like blew up the character, and then Mignola's creator came back and did more comics, more stories, and really expanded the lore. The early stuff is just like short stories. It's not that much different than like early Wolverine. It's just like, here's this character, he's kind of cool. He goes on some adventures and stories. We don't know much about him. And that was about it. But then later they started adding in actual kind of lore and stuff. But originally he wasn't meant to have any, he wasn't meant to be like a superhero character. He was meant to be like an alternative character and have his stories are more like the Twilight Zone or the X-Files than say Spider-Man or Superman soap opera shit.
Yeah, definitely a bit more darker than maybe your average superhero. That's easy enough to kind of to see. For me, like my only real exposure to it were the ads that would be shown. I was reading a lot of Aliens and Predator, and there would always be ads for the Hellboy comics. Now, at the time, I didn't realize that Hellboy was like a new thing. I just assumed he was just an older character that I hadn't known about. Like I just saw the ads.
Yeah, he's purposely done in that like pulp style, so he does seem older than a 90s character.
Yeah, it definitely gives off those vibes. I have actually seen that the first Ron Perlman film, the 2004 film, and I did
Yeah, I saw
enjoy
that
it, even
cinema.
like not knowing much about the the character overall. I did enjoy that movie.
Like I saw that when I was living in Perth the first time. I think saw that local Hoyts or whatever. I'd only read one or two stories post year 2000 then, so I'd read something. But mainly I was just like, oh, it's Ron Perlman, I'll go watch that. And it's superhero-y in the sense that it's like the comics are more kind of like shorter stories and like dark and mysterious, and Sherlock Holmes meets bloody Cthulhu, sort of, all sorts of kind of horror and detectives kind of mystery stuff. Whereas the movie they made into like your typical action adventure movie formula for to get the audience, and it was quite popular. People who had never heard of Hellboy, knew nothing about it, just went and watched it as a movie that year, and it did fairly well.
If it spawned a sequel and a reboot, then that's probably a sign of success. I have to say, I do like, even just reading your description here as well, I do like that idea, because we've seen it in a few things, like Indiana Jones and even video games, like we were talking about before the show, in Call of Duty with their Nazi zombies and stuff. I love the idea of the of Hitler being obsessed with the occult to the point where he's having Nazis try and conjure up these demonic beings to try and destroy the world or take over the world. Always up to no good.
It's a thing that comes up a few times.
Yeah, they were really into their paranormal activities, supposedly during the latter
even
end of
like
World
some
War
of those,
II.
like the old Wolfenstein game that had like the old Nazis in there, and later Wolfensteins had more of the occult stuff in it, and they had like bloody weird technology and shit. But yeah, that first film actually really ties into. It combines stuff from several different stories and kind of makes it, I don't know, slightly epic kind of sort of thing, and adds a more mythology, which the comics only had a little bit, but as they went on, they kind of expanded and did other things. And I didn't know how many books and stories they'd actually done until this point, because I've read them years and years and years ago, and only 6 months ago I picked up just some of the early trades, some of the earliest stories. They collected about 3 or 4 big kind of omnibus style trades. Might just skip over there because they're there on the shelf here. So we've got the Wild Hunt, Hellboy in Hell, Strange Places, Seed of Destruction, and then I've got one of the early volumes of BPRD, which is like the spin-off book from Hellboy about all the supernatural investigators group that go off and have their own books. But there's so bloody many of these.
Am I correct in saying that Hellboy is still a Dark Horse Comics?
As far as I know, always has been. But check out how many here. Like this is someone's. I think this was on Reddit or something. I was just looking up the different series or whatever. I mean, it's all just Hellboy. There's no other series of that in BPRD. But there's those other characters, like side characters, like you got Lobster Johnson, Witchfinder, Abe Sapien. They're all just like all BPRD kind of stuff, that mini series or whatever. But this is like a a reading order for helping people unfamiliar with the books and that. And I was like, man, there's so many. There's like 10 omnibus volumes of bloody BPRD. I couldn't believe how many they'd actually done. Because the comic shops I haven't been to for years and years, and that's the only place I would ever see any of these books. And that's where I got that BPRDs on the shelf. That came from the Perth comic shop before it, well, technically it exists, but the old shop closed down and moved upstairs to be like a little front shop that was just tiny and hardly anything in there. So to me, the old shop was dead and gone.
I'd be willing, if these are still, the reason I was asking, were they still under Dark Horse? Dark Horse are pretty good at re-releasing the stuff that they have in their library.
I was looking on Amazon this week. You can still get a lot of Hellboy trades, but for me, it's been this character's going on 30 years or whatever, and so he's had at least 3 different lots of major trades. Your basic soft cover paperbacks. He's had big fancy hardcover ones that were like basically 2 regular paperbacks into one, but oversized, like as big as your Tintin Asterisk size, pretty much, showing off the artwork. I wanted to get those years ago, but I was away from the comic shop and I moved into the state and I couldn't get there and couldn't buy them. By the time I got around to trying to buy them, they didn't exist anymore out of print, and there's a whole new lot of prints, which are just like your standard kind of thick budget price paperback. So they're reasonably affordable, but it's I don't know, it gets expensive now. So if you want to get the full run of anything now, and I'm quite happy with those ones I've got on the shelf. I will probably pick up a couple more here and there of the BPRD over the next 12 months. I didn't. There were so many, and I was like, oh man, I actually want to get, probably might be the next series I collect. I've just completed the IDW Ninja Turtles. That's 150 issues over. Hang on, the last one's on the floor here. This is volume 18. You can see how thick they are. That 18 bloody volumes, and I tell you what, the last 3 were rubbish, but everything before that was good. But that's finished and done. That's 2 years for me getting all those hardcovers, because I got into them very late on. But that is the most recent one, and you just come out, and that's the very end of that series. So I'm thinking I might actually get into this back into this BPRD now, because I'm rereading a lot of older stuff and some stuff for the first time, because I've only read a handful of Hellboy stories.
I would definitely be willing to give these a spin, and give Dark Horse a bit of money too, because they are the underdog player in the industry. It feels like still they're the number 3. They're the ECW brand here, but
yeah. As far as I know, there should be digital versions of all these, I would assume, because Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse do digital pretty much everything these days. Like, so if anyone out there who's like never read any of these, first, if you've got a public library, go and see if they've got anything, because usually that's where I found this kind of stuff. I don't know what it's like now, but that's why I read a lot of comics over the years I could not afford to buy was public libraries. The next best thing is to go to the digital stores and see if they have a sale on, and just check out a trade or something, or check out a particular story, and if it appeals, that's like the cheap way to kind of dip your toes in the water and not go. For me, I've like read enough stuff. I'm like, I read a volume of something, I know if I want to collect the whole series, or if I'm just like, I'm happy with that one and I don't want to read any more for some books, like Usagi Yojimbo, you know, the samurai rabbit from Stan Sakai. That's an amazing series which has been running for, well, it's been running for as long as the Ninja Turtles, and there's a lot of stories in comics. But I don't love them. They're really enjoyable. They're fantastic. I've got one big phone book sized edition, and I read it, and it's like, it's objectively, it's great. The story is great, the art's great, but it just doesn't appeal to me when I read it. I like the character, but I read it, I get to the end, and I'm like, I've got no desire to read anymore. I just don't care. So sometimes it's like that. You could be like, oh, Hellboy's fantastic. You can read a volume and go, yeah, it's good, but I don't give a fuck. It's like that sometimes. Like, you know, people rave about, oh, you got to see this. This is great. People like, you got to watch Game of Thrones. I watched 2 episodes and went, that's enough for me. Never watched it again.
I still haven't made it past first season of that. So anybody who knows me
I only
knows
watched the first 2 episodes, and that was it. I just went, no, don't care. Boring.
It takes me a long time to get through things, and if I don't like them straight away, it's going to take an even longer time.
The only show that I didn't immediately like that I loved down the track was probably The Wire, because it's a slow, but it's really slow. But when you get into it, it's like, oh, it's like just like the best. But yeah, so Hellboy kind of blew up post year 2000 with several movies. You had Ron Perlman and Hellboy, and he was back again with Hellboy 2: The Golden Army, which I thought both of those are pretty excellent. At the time, some people kind of complained a bit, like, you know, fanboy complaints, not cinema snob complaints, saying they didn't like how it kind of changed the character and made him a bit too mainstream, I guess, and pulls him out of his dark kind of kitschy Fox Mulder Twilight Zone quarter and made him a bit too, which I would agree with those criticisms, but I think they're both legitimately good films that worked and appealed to a wide audience, but still retained enough of the core character concepts and ideas that if you like it, you can go off and pick up the comics, or you can just enjoy the films and never look at the comics.
You know, I was sitting kind of thinking here about it as well. I suppose it does make sense that he came about in the 90s. It's like, imagine trying to get a character like this over during like the Satanic Panic era, or like, you know, like especially as a hero, as an actual like supposed good guy. Like the imagery alone, you know, just would not fly.
It's good they made this film the era they did. If they tried to do this character film in the 90s when they were doing, Phantom and Shadow and Dick Tracy, it would, there would have been something rubbish and forgettable. But because they are long enough that they could do good practical effects and whatever else, and they're fortunate to see decent films. So I didn't know until recent years that it'd been two more bloody films, different actors, different directors, writers, whatever. I watched that number 4, Brian Taylor Crook. I watched that one a few months ago, and it was decent. The other one, with one that says got David Harbour, I watched that one several years ago, but it'd been out for a couple of years, and I was like, oh, there's another. I didn't know it existed, and one day I'm just looking up movies, like, oh, this exists, I guess I'll watch it. And both of them are actually decent. The weird thing is, Hellboy and Hellboy 2 are the better films. If you just ignore Hellboy the character and say what's the most entertaining films, the first two are just like entertaining, good film. Even you can even watch them like family films, like fantasy adventure. They're not too violent, they're not too sweary or whatever, not too scary for kids. If your kid can watch Gremlins, they can watch Hellboy. It's fine. Whereas the later two are much more like the comic books and the style and the look and the lore, but they're not as entertaining as films. If you like Hellboy, they're enjoyable to watch. But if you don't like Hellboy or know anything about it, it's just really confusing to watch, and you don't know what the hell's going on half the time.
And I suppose when I watched that 2004 film, probably like when you were describing that Usagi comic, I enjoyed it from beginning to end, I would say, but I wasn't like, okay, now I really need to watch the sequel.
Yeah.
Like I was just fine with it. Like I will probably watch the sequel, but like I wasn't like crying out that I needed to see what happens next or looking for
like
more.
the first
but I
two
would
I have on
definitely agree
DVD, and I'll probably switch them out
movie.
for Blu-ray this year sometime.
But yeah, I hadn't even known that there was 2 other films.
Yeah,
Like,
that third one, I did actually quite enjoy the third one. I just ordered it today for $5 on Blu-ray on eBay because I was like, oh, how can I not pick it up for $5?
And are these connected to the Ron Perlman films?
No, not at all. Not at all. But they're much more like the early 90s short stories of like Dark Horse, whether it's Hellboy or Aliens or whatever. They're just short, self-contained stories.
And so they're not even connected to one another.
No, not at all.
Right.
Yeah, I was surprised when I saw there was a fourth one because like the first two are quite a big budget. The third one was a lower budget film. The fourth one was like almost like a no budget film. But it's really impressive, like what they did with it. It's probably the most like the comic books, but it's a little headache inducing to watch. There's a lot of it's like watching the first Evil Dead film. There's a lot of weird camera tricks and stuff they did on a low budget that work well, but it just like it's like going into one of those big spinning machines at the bloody at a theme park or whatever, a roller coaster. You're like, well, it's exciting, but I feel like I'm going to vomit now. It's like that's a little bit what it's like watching this film, not because I'm engrossed in it, because a lot of spinning around camera shit like the first Evil Dead. It's really disorienting, especially in the second half of the film. It gets worse. So in that way, it's the worst of the films, but it's also probably the most faithful to the comics and style and the artwork and everything. So it's worth a watch, but there's parts of it they did really well on a low budget, but there's too many camera tricks and bullshit that if the same person made another film, I'm sure they would do something better next time that's less vomit-inducing.
I wonder. I'm sure, like, just given that, the way things are in Hollywood and the lack of ideas, I'm sure it's due for another cycle of,
that fourth one even got made is a big surprise. I didn't know it existed until one day I was like, oh, when I read about it, I thought, oh, it must be another animation. It's like, no, it's another bloody live action one with a different actor again. But yeah, so we got 4 films, and all 4 are actually enjoyable. I would happily say watch any of these once, whereas I know I can happily sit down and watch the first 2 any day and still enjoy them. And probably the one that's the most enjoyable as a film, for like, especially watch like your family or mate, is probably Hellboy 2. It's a real kind of crowd pleaser fantasy film. There's lots of cool creatures. If you like kind of like practical creatures like Jim Henson style stuff, there's lots of cool puppets and weird monsters and shit in it, where he goes into kind of this kind of like fairy monster underworld place. Like, but yeah, they're all actually decent. But yeah, then there's also not 1, not 2, but 3 animated specials. You can get Sword of Stones and Blood and Iron had single releases. These are like, I think they're like about 45 minutes each or whatever. They've been released in a combo edition on Blu-ray. and this other one here, just Hellboy animated. I don't think I've ever actually seen that other one. Used to be the other two were common at the rental store. It's how I used to see them.
I had no idea these were a thing either. Were these straight DVD type deals?
Yeah,
or
yeah, they were direct market ones, and the same as how DC Comics is always doing those direct market Batman features. Basically, because of that market is why this exists. But both these animated features are actually really good, possibly better than the live action films. They're just like very entertaining.
I wonder, do these ever pop up on any of the streaming services? I might be more inclined to jump into something animated than live action.
Yeah, well, you can.
4-minute
I'm pretty
runtime.
sure you can get that Blu-ray cheap from the UK, like that one that's got the 2 specials on it. Whereas the streaming networks, they're so old now. They're like, I don't know, at least 15 years old, whereas they would have been and gone on some of them. But they're probably on. They'll be somewhere. They'll be on some bloody networks.
Well, look, maybe the physical media is the way to go. Own that shit.
Yeah, I do the same. If something's on Netflix, I can just watch it once and go, "Oh, that's okay." But if it's $5 for a bloody Blu-ray, I'm having it. It's like, but yeah, they're surprisingly good. Like the animated features are like really excellent.
Are they like, say, aged for like kids, or are they violent?
I would say all ages. It's if you can watch like 90s X-Men, they're not. There's probably some stuff that's a little bit more violent in it, but like if you watch 90s X-Men, there's nothing terribly much more than that. But I might be forgetting something. Maybe somebody gets terribly disemboweled or something and I've forgotten. But I think the rating on them was like probably something like 13 or 15. So that's like, if you're like 14 years old, there's nothing objectionable in them. But the art style looks nice, the animation's quality, and the stories are good. But yeah, they're really excellent, highly recommended. And there's been like several video games, none of which I've ever got to play because they've always been kind of obscure and not easy to get. Like back in the PlayStation 2 days, they had a game then, and I remember seeing the magazines that got terrible reviews, and I won't buy that. If I could have picked it up cheaper, I would have gave it a go, but it was fairly rubbish. A few years later, they did some other ones. I think PS3 or PS4. I think PlayStation 3 might have had one, but there's been several games, all of which have been like complete rubbish for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden he pops up as a guest character in Injustice 2, which is also one that has the Ninja Turtles in it. So you can have Hellboy versus Ninja Turtles if you want. You go real indie character kind of fights. And
it's pretty cool.
This one, Web of Weird, that's the most recent one. I think it's on PS4 or PS5 or PC. One of them. It's like a modern thing. This one actually looks amazing. I mean, it looks average as far as a game, but the artwork. You would think there was actually a page from the comic book.
Yeah,
but it's actually that was actually the game playing, and I just took a still screenshot of it. And he's just going around bashing this dude, doing some basic combat. The gameplay is nothing to write home about, but the look of it is just like amazing. It literally is Mike Mignola's artwork come to life as a video game. It shows how far they've come with the kind of cell shading they used to experiment with in the like Dreamcast era, like Jet Set Radio and stuff like that. That kind of technique's come a long way where you can do stuff now. If you get away from your stupid Uncanny Valley nonsense on your PS4s and 5s, and actually, I wish they'd use more of this super powerful computer technology to just do like really good comic book games that look like artwork come to life, So it looks fantastic.
I'm guessing that the bad PS2 one that you're talking about, it was probably based off the live action movie. Or
yeah, it was around the movie
era.
It was
probably a bad.
Yeah,
there's so many of those bad movie tie-in games from the PlayStation.
Van Helsing.
2
Van
era.
Helsing is a copy of the Devil May Cry game, similar combat, but his hat falls off, and you can't leave the screen until you go back and pick it up and put it back on, and it does nothing in the game except stop you from being able to move to the next screen. It's so annoying.
Gives the game time to load the next section while you go back and grab your hat.
Yeah, it's just dumb. It just falls off and it just sits on the ground and it doesn't get damaged. It's just like a little reticle and you have to pick it up and you think, why can't I walk onto the next screen like Resident Evil and walk onto the next screen? I can't do it because I pick my fucking head up and it falls off every time someone hits you. It's like stupidest thing to put in the game. But yeah, fighting old Batman and Injustice and Turtles. And there's been used to be like no Hellboy merchandise, and over the years there's quite a bit of merchandise now, but it's always been direct market stuff like comic book stuff. I mean, if you're in America, it might have come to a store over there. But like these ones, this is old Mezco ones. This is like the movie looking versions of the characters. There's that monster thing he fought in the first movie on the right there, and
these old, they are a bit older, these Mazgos, but they look very nice, I have to say. Like if you're into it, I'm sure these are like the best versions you could get.
You can. I think on AliExpress and you can sometimes get kind of a, I don't know if NECA or someone did one, but like a bootleg Hellboy that's reasonable quality. I've been trying to get a Hellboy figure for like probably 20 years unsuccessfully. I've just never been in the right place at the right time to get them. Every time I've lived where there was a comic shop where I could have got one, I was buying comics but not figures, and then I've moved, and then those comic shops closed down, so there was nowhere before there was enough online stores and that to buy this stuff, and then you had to be someone doing a pre-order online to get some of these things, you know, because they're not kind of things you see at the retail stores. But you can get movie-based ones that look like old Ron Perlman. There's some like PVC statues and other statues based on those later movies. And then there's also the comic book style figure, and there's even the animated style ones too here from someone's collection here. See on the one on the very bottom of the screen, where that's the animated style, like as a little figure or statue or whatever. Yeah. So there's a fair amount of stuff around, but all of it was fairly pricey when it was released, and pricier now if you can get a hold of any of them. But there is stuff out there, so it's nice that it exists for people that want to try and track it down. But I've never managed to get a hold of anything. I really wanted probably top left here, just the Ron Perlman style, the old stogie cigar in the mouth like the Thing, and then that little gun thing in his hand with the trench coat. That was kind of my favorite look.
Yeah, I like the soft goods coats on them as well. They look pretty nice. I'd imagine it's the type of license that's it's probably a tricky license in the sense that he's popular enough that kind of people do know who he is, but as a character, he's still kind of niche in the sense that you probably couldn't rely on him to, especially if you're going with like a toy line or something, you're probably taking
it's like trying to sell the Phantom or Zorro in today's market. It's like, who's going to buy that? So many people. They're great characters. I love them, but like.
And just if you happen to be of the age and at the time, he was kind of just put out there as well. But that's the thing, though. You don't know, like like I said, he's niche maybe just at the moment. But if he had another run of like a popular films, if like some studio picked up the license and really smashed it, that would change movie toys everything. Like remember how kind of like in the past and yesterday's news, things like Fantastic Four and stuff where before they started, like I know Fantastic Four has kind of been fucked around a lot, but even things like Incredible Hulk and lots of those, like Captain America. Like Captain America to me was like something that was so like, you know, your granddad's fucking comic book. Like it was such like in the past, like, and now it's like now he's probably back up as popular as he ever was before. Thanks to in large part these MCU movies that really kind of push the character. So you never know. It just might take the right type of licensing deal or some type of collaboration, get a smash hit movie out there, and then all of a sudden it's Hellboy plushies, Hellboy Funko Pops, fucking Hellboy everything, you know? Yeah, exactly.
I hope we get another movie in our lifetime. Like I hope they get. I don't care if it's 10 or 20 years. I hope that they get another one out sometime.
I think we will, just based on the fact that they always go back to old ideas, and just because those first two movies were successful, they'll go back to that well again, just to try and scrape what's left out of it.
Yeah, he's a great character, and like the comics to me is still the best, source material, the best overall thing. He's branched out into a bit of merchandise, a bit of films, a bit of animation. He's done fairly well, but he's like. Well, if you look at early Ninja Turtles and stuff like that, he's like a real indie comic style character that kind of broke through and became popular, but not big. Like very few indie type characters ever get super big. They kind of have their little wave or moment, then they usually dive back under again. And sometimes they stick around, sometimes they don't. So he's kind of an anomaly. He's kind of stuck around. And I think the way the character's been designed in stories, they really stand the test of time because although he started in the 90s, he was nothing to do with the superhero trend in that era. Any of the stuff that was going on, we talked about in Spider-Man Clone Saga, Batman Nightfall, anything like that. He was nothing to do with any of that stuff. He was just like way over here on the side doing his own thing. And I think he became bigger years later as more people discovered the character and find out, oh, he's not a superhero character. He's not running around in tights and going out of space and shit like that. He's having like real grounded 70s Batman style comic stuff where it's real like detective stuff, or real Fox Mulder in season 1 X-Files, where he's just like going a bit stir crazy on the couch, full of watching TV, and he's wake up in the middle of the night going, oh man, I've got to go back there. There was a clue or a thing or a mystery. It's got to be solved. And except at the same time, he's also a lot like the Thing from Fantastic Four. Not that he's big and muscly with a rocky hand. He's just like, forget about it. I don't care about this nonsense. Why do I got to go to work? You know, he's just like, I want to sit around and not be bothered. But then he's got a job to do, or has to go and go into some hostile place and discover somebody's been murdered, or is a curse or a monster, and he gets into a fight with a monster or whatever. But he's just like real working class. That's the thing that makes him different. He's not like some high-minded Superman godlike character, and he's not like some driven maniac like Batman. He's just like real working class, like the Thing from Fantastic Four. So he's very relatable. He's always like chilling on the cigars and stuff, and he's just like the kind of like, you know, like the kind of like cranky old uncle kind of character, you know?
And when you mix those qualities of being both working class and a demonic hellspawn together, you know, you can reach a lot of people and touch a lot of people's hearts. You can relate to a lot of people.
Yeah. So he's not, although he's not a superhero, you could still basically call him an anti-hero in the, you know, the comic book genre and whatever. But being his Dark Horse, he's more on the horror side of things than the superhero side of things. But yeah, just a nice bit of artwork here from old Mike McNaught.
Very, very nice. Yeah, there's just a very nice style to a lot of his stuff that I would be keen to check out.
It looks weird actually when you see Mignola do like he did a Justice League Darkseid story. I forget the name of it. I think it was Cosmic something or other. But when you see him doing his style of artwork on regular superheroes, they all look really weird. Not bad, just weird. Just like, oh, I love this artwork for horror and Hellboy. When you see him doing like bright, shiny superheroes with this artwork, it looks like really strange. And people have got strange angles and feet and faces. But yeah,
nightmarish.
Yeah. But I think like Dark Horse in the 90s, along with DC's Vertigo Comics, were really doing their own thing as far as like supporting like independent type writers to do their own kind of stuff, and doing like more mature adult stories and horror stories and alternative things. So he's one of those ones who's kind of survived through to today. And I'm like, I guess I'm a casual horror fan. I wouldn't say I'm a hardcore horror fan, but you know, I like my Night of the Living Dead and Friday and Jason's and Freddy's and that sort of thing. But I do like the older stories from like the early parts of the century, like your bloody you know, H.P. Lovecrafts and Cthulhu's and stuff like that got adapted into a lot of different ripped off into a lot of different modern media, whether it's video games or Twilight Zones or Outer Limits. I do love those sort of creepy, mysterious sort of stuff that's not even always straight out horror. It's more almost like science fiction, fantasy, weird, kooky stuff that's kind of genre bending, and that Hellboy's like that. It kind of bends a lot of different genres, and it doesn't feel like it needs to be stuck in one place, but it still does its own thing, you know.
Strange and unusual, if not outright, you know, horrific. It's just very odd and weird.
Yeah, well, the superhero influence, you would say, is really from like the 30s and 40s stuff is what influences Hellboy as far as that aspect to it. Like the I can't think of the bloody dude is. Alan Moore did Tom Strong, who was based on the Man of Bronze. Can't think of his name.
Tim Largo's watching, he'll fill us in on
I'll type it in. So Doc Savage, so
Doc Savage.
Tom Strong was based on Doc Savage when Alan Moore couldn't use the rights to do Doc Savage the same way when he did Watchmen and all that. But yeah, so he's influenced by some of those old pulpy characters and early stuff from like the very beginnings of the American comic book genre and the stuff that preceded, or like all the actual pulp, bloody dime novels and what's it, and all the stuff they used to print on toilet paper that you could pick up in bloody waiting rooms and airports and take them on the train or whatever.
This polarized image we're looking at now, for some reason, it's given me extreme Ghostbusters vibes. It had an animation style that was very odd and peculiar, and a lot of the way they drew the ghosts and the demons and that, they almost have this Hellboyish look about them. As I look at this picture here, like if you were to take Hellboy out of the picture and just leave all the weird looking grotesque creatures and stuff, that looks like something straight out of the extreme Ghostbusters cartoon from the 90s.
So one of the things I like about Mignola's artwork is it is creepy and kooky and spooky, but you can a lot of the cool covers and pinups and stuff you've done, they're real like kind of nightmare fuel. It's like stuff you see when you kind of like fall into sleep and have a bit of a bad dream. You know, it's really getting into that like collective I don't know, I forget what bloody Freud and Jung said, but you know, collective unconscious, that's the term I think of.
Yes. Like
humanity's terrors and the unknown and ancient myths and beasts and monsters and wild wolves and dinosaurs. It's all this like stuff just like going around in people's heads.
Here's someone I know even less about.
Ah, yes. We'll
even though the iconography, though, I've seen this character a lot over the years. There he is right now. But I feel like
known as an icon.
Without knowing anything, and I know you're going to fill me in now in a minute, but without knowing anything much about him, it feels like his imagery and likeness has been used for other stuff for years, like other you know, brands and stuff have kind of
He's like the Mickey Mouse of Japan.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was trying to articulate. So 1952, is that when he came about?
I'm not entirely sure. It says that on there, but there's different, like the comics and the cartoons and different years and whatnot. But yeah, I'm not just saying that jokingly. Here's like the Mickey Mouse of Japan. It's probably like the best comparison. And where people in the West probably haven't seen Mickey Mouse's earliest animation, because it's like you know, it's just shorts that they've shown like films and that before TV existed. And a lot of those early ones not even really around anymore until we get to the colorized ones. And of course, the art style for early Mickey, Donald, Goofy changed from, I don't know, Merry Melodies or Symphonies or whichever one was. There's all names confuse the heck out of me. When you look back at those old characters and the rabbit character that came from Mickey, all those old ones, they all changed in the art style. As did Astro. He like had his early look, and his look kind of evolved and changed. But he became this massive icon of print via comics, of course, like the old bloody manga pages that would get serialized and then later collected into volumes. Became a cartoon anime icon, and sometimes when you look online, it'll say that Astro Boy was the first ever anime TV show in Japan, which is technically correct. That doesn't mean it's the first cartoon in Japan. They had animated films that go back to the early part of the century, like Panda and the Magic Serpent and stuff, that are fairly low budget affairs and not historically interesting, but not terribly entertaining to watch now outside of, you know, outside of people who are really into like animation history or whatever. There was some other cartoons and animations before this in Japan, but when I say it was the first anime, they mean like when you say Superman was the first superhero, because he was the first character to ever be in a superhero comic book, as opposed to a newspaper or a novel or a pulp or whatever. Is the first one to be in a cartoon that has all these anime conventions that other shows followed and did, and to be like a serialized kind of thing with this ongoing character and stories. And there you go, 1952. There it is.
1952. The copyright was true to its word.
I guess we should say what his actual name is as well. That would probably be helpful, because like he's known in the West as Astro Boy, but Tetsuwan Atomo, or Mighty Atom, is one of the most influential. My throat's getting dry like last week. One of the most influential characters in manga and anime history, created by Osamu Tezuka in 1952. Often called the god of manga, Tezuka shaped modern anime storytelling style, cinematic framing, and emotional depth. Astro Boy is his most iconic creation. And I'd agree with all those statements there. He definitely did all those things in his various stories in manga. So the brief story or origin or whatever, like your old Batman, Superman origins. Astro Boy is a highly advanced childlike robot created by Dr. Tenma after the loss of his son. However, when Tobayo was his actual biological son, who looks just like him, but he dies. When Tenma realizes Astro cannot grow or replace his real child, he abandons him. It's quite horrific, actually, in the stories. The very earliest story is basically, if you've watched Walt Disney's Pinocchio, it's that. It's not ripping off that, it's just riffing on the similar theme. He gets sold to the circus, and it's like, this isn't the fun circus, this is like you're a slave, and you have no rights, and you have nothing. It's later taken in by Professor Okonomizu. If anyone's seen the cartoons iconography, he's the guy with the big crazy nose and puffy hair. And if you've ever played Mega Man, like the professor guy, and that's basically another version of him. Who's a professor, is a compassionate father figure and helps Astro find a purpose, fighting injustice, protecting humans and robots, and exploring what it means to be alive. Later in the comics and animations, the professor, who's also like another genius level guy, he builds more robots to be his family. He builds a sister called Urain. Urain has powers kind of like him, whereas he also builds parent robots who are like full-size parents, but they don't have any special superpowers like him. They're just like regular parents who are like real goofy and not even as smart as him, but it just gives them like a pseudo family sort of thing, as well as actual human characters, and kind of builds out the world.
That origin story is very sad. Like just even in that blurb, it's quite
just as heartbreaking if you watch the cartoon or read the comics. It's just like the scenes in Pinocchio where he gets sold to the circus. It's that same basic, scene and iconography, and it's quite horrible. And there's a lot of tragic, horrible stuff that happens in the Astro Boy stories. There's a lot of hopeful stuff, but there's a lot of you might think, it's just for kids and all that, but they're really all ages stories. There's a lot of tragic, horrible stuff and deaths, and it's one thing in Japan, they're not afraid to show death in children's media and comics and stuff, and have like grim endings to the stories, like, and then the bomb exploded, everybody died, the end, roll the credits and come back next week and have more fun, kids. Or then the atomic bomb went off, because of course Japanese media, from Godzilla to Astro Boy to, Mighty Atom, that comes obviously from the atomic bomb theme, or the media that followed in World War II about the grief and desperation and horrible things that happened during war times, and then looking forward to the future, the kind of futurism and optimism of nuclear power, which is basically what Astro Boy is. He's basically like a nuclear powered kind of robot with 100,000 horsepower.
That's just the exact type of thing that you'd sell to a circus, just to get it out of your hair. You're selling this like nuclear powered AI super advanced robot,
And he is like a real innocent sort of character who's like a, 8 to 10-year-old boy who he's very naive about the world. But as the stories go on, he has adventures, and he learns and becomes smarter and, less naive about stuff. But they still keep that lovable quality that's there for like a Mickey Mouse or a Tintin or whatever, where he's very iconic and relatable to kids. But he also has like crazy powers and can fire lasers and guns and stuff.
I'm getting like, it's like wholesome Blade Runner vibes type of, pretty
much. That's a good way to put it. It's like a wholesome Blade Runner for kids, because there's a lot of hardcore science fiction stuff. If you read the full volumes, I forget how many, it was like 20 something. These are the anniversary editions, I think from the 70s, of various reprints. But I'll just skip ahead a moment here because I can see the Dark Horse ones. Yeah, so there's 23 volumes in the Dark Horse ones. These are around 2002. These were the first English, I was going to say English, that's the wrong way to say English translations. These I got to read at the Perth Public Library back in whenever that was, 2002, 2003. I was very fortunate they actually had all of them. So I got to read every volume of this, and they were fantastic. Same time I was reading from the same library, they had full run of Grant Morrison's Invisibles and Neil Gaiman's Sandmans. So at the same time, I got to read all this cool stuff, having come from the old comic shop in New Zealand, where everything's super expensive, and I really could afford to buy a trade of anything. To walk into a library where they've got a full volume or something, and over a month, just read the whole, every volume, all the stories, was a real treat. Unfortunately, they've been out of print for a long time. In recent years, Dark Horse did these little omnibus ones, which that's the first volume of them. The price was reasonable, but the quality was not as good as these old ones. It's basically the same size, same everything, but the binding is really shit. Like the pages are nearly falling out brand new. So I didn't buy any more. I bought one and didn't buy the rest. And when you're trying to read them, there's a lot of gutter bleed where it's really hard to actually see what's in the middle. Whereas these single volume ones that most manga comes in, and even most other modern manga, like here's a random volume of a Sailor Moon, you can open it nice and flat easily and read what's in the middle. Those early editions are much better. But unfortunately, they're out of print, and they haven't redone those ones again now. I wish they would redo those again. They were like $20 each, so that would cost you around $500 for 23 volumes, whereas now you cannot get them, and people are trying to sell these for like $100 each on eBay, which is crazy. They're just little paperback bloody mini mangas that they're not worth it at all.
And like from a reading structure, is it kind of like the adventure of the week style setup, or is there like a long running kind of arc that you're getting through?
That's a really tricky question. I'll be sip of this. It's a real mix of a bit of everything. It's hard to even compare to like American or European comics, because Tezuka, as he did stories, well, actually, like the early Tintins, he went back and redid some of his early stories. He would redraw them and redo them again. And then he would kind of change the story a bit. He would invent more characters and kind of add more characters in that would then become part of the wider world or lore. So to start off with, you've kind of got shorter stories, I guess. But then as it goes on, they're mostly kind of self-contained stories, but like the same way you can pick up like some random 70s Batman comic or an 80s one, it's still part of an overall world or chronology that's kind of changing as it goes. So it's hard to describe. And another thing Tezuka did with his characters is he had something called a star system, where he would reuse various characters as if they were actors, and there would be in other mangas and other stories where they're not the same character. So there's other characters that look like Astro. They're completely different stories. That are not him. They don't have robot powers. They're just a regular person or whatever. And like he did Blackjack and Phoenix and all sorts. He did like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different manga stories and reused some of these iconic looking characters. But Astro became like the number one he was really known for. But yeah, it is.
I wonder,
tricky to actually ask that question.
Yeah, because like even that's kind of going back to what I was saying.
You can pick up any one of these volumes and read it and get a story out of it. You don't have to read what was before or after as kind of the short version.
But so like just like say to elaborate a bit on what you're saying about him reusing certain like character types, Are you saying like I could be seeing the imagery of what is essentially Astro Boy in a comic where he is not Astro Boy?
Yes, that's like, completely unrelated. Yeah. You can look up online Osamu Tezuka's star system, and it'll come up with 5 or 10 characters that appear in about 100 different mangas. But there's other characters that are completely original to those stories. Some will just be cameos. There's one where there's a character named Rock, and he'll turn up in this, he'll turn up in Metropolis, and he'll turn up in other. Sometimes he's a good guy, sometimes he's a bad guy, because it's like he's an actor playing a different role, but he visually looks the same, just like in the real world. If you took Hugh Jackman, here he's Wolverine, and there he's in the bloody whatever else with Christian Bale, and so it's quite interesting.
I like the sound of that, actually.
It doesn't matter to the reading of the stories. It's just kind of something you learn about if you've read some of his different stories and things. If you've read some of his different mangas, you might think, oh, he's just using a shorthand, this kind of archetype character. And then you say, oh, no, the guy who's got like a bald head, a big walrus moustache, and when he gets annoyed with people, he does like judo throws, and sometimes he's a detective. or sometimes he's a school, and the Astro Boy, he's a school teacher, and the other ones, he's a detective with the gun and the hat, but he's always doing those exact same judo throws because it's like the same dude in a different story or same actor in a different story.
That's really cool, man. And it's class. It's kind of like almost like when, yeah, it is. It really is like a director recasting.
It's not that much different than Mickey
actors.
Mouse.
Yeah.
Mickey's always Mickey, but you've got Mickey on vacation, Mickey with pants, Mickey with no pants, Mickey and Donald. Mickey's a fireman, then he's just like living at home, and then he's having stupid adventures with Donald. And it's not that different than some of the other stuff, but yeah, it's a pretty cool and unique thing. Those are some of the front covers from these old small paperbacks that Dark Horse did. I was really hoping they would reprint these single volume ones. So when they put these ones out, I got quite annoyed because the omnibus editions are all finished now, and I didn't end up not buying them because the quality was so bad. I just went nut for the price. Today's prices, I went, it's not worth it. You can see on this bottom image here, that's the that's volume 1 here that I got in my hand, and that's the other ones, which look nice, but the quality was really rubbish. So I was a bit annoyed because of all the comic stories I'd like to have the full volumes of. For 20 years, I've been wanting to get those volumes, but they weren't around when I had the money to get them. I'll just jump back here because I went ahead. So yeah, he's known as a big icon around the world. Well, but people would recognize the look of him. There's a lot of countries where people might know who the hell he is, but you see him like you see Mickey Mouse or Elvis or Michael Jackson. You're just like, oh, it's this thing. There's a lot of merchandise over the years. You had like tin toys, wooden toys, PVC vinyl stuff. There's a few action figures like Trigokin type stuff, but most of them are usually kind of static little vinyl kind of figures or little super chibi ones, super cute, super deformed looking ones. But I do not have a single piece of Astro Boy merchandise or figures. I haven't been able to get a toy for a long time. Occasionally see bootlegs, like the old China market bootlegs, and I thought, no, I want a real one, not a fake one. But if you're in Japan, you're in luck. There's plenty of merchandise.
Yeah, that's it. They're everywhere.
You can certainly get Astro Boys and Gundams in Japan. There's no shortage of them.
I'd say they were banging them out since the 50s. Like it just
some of these well, probably 50s and 60s, I guess, would have been as like peak for merchandise, I guess, for like mainstream popularity and being a newer sort of character.
Testing as well, he's had like a kind of propped up supporting media though, as well as like the obviously he's had his comic or his manga run or whatever. But yeah, look, we got merch, we got Ami. Have you seen this 60s one? I've
seen bits of it, and I will be probably watching most of the run over the next couple of months because they did. This show in Japan went for something like over 150 episodes, which was a lot. They did it's an English dub of it at some point, which got a really good Australian release on DVD from Madman Entertainment, who do a lot of anime import stuff here, including doing their own subtitles and whatever. But yeah, I think this has a English dub, and you can find a fair bit of these on YouTube. And this show it's a good show, but it's not as entertaining as some of the stuff that came after it because it's very early, and because they had to do things on such a low budget, they do less frames of animation, trying to crank them out really fast. So it's one of the most iconic, well-known anime shows ever in existence, and it's known for being a trailblazer. It's also known for, unfortunately, setting the standard for limited animation in Japan and for trying to get people sleeping under their desk and working all night trying to crank this stuff out for a studio and keep the network and advertisers. So it kind of created that thing to start with.
Yeah, it's a working process that's been copied and duplicated many times since.
It has led to people dying in the real world in Japan from just like working to death.
Yeah, it's not something that I'd be looking to culturally appropriate myself into my own life. Definitely not.
In the DVD sets, this was released in 2 halves, and like episodes 1 through 50 and 50 through 51 through 100 I have the second set because it's been out of print on DVD for quite a number of years, but because it was an Australian release, I got a second-hand one last year. So I'll be watching episodes 51 through 100 in the next couple of months, and I'm pretty confident I should be able to find the other ones online. Some are on YouTube and other high seas places. It's not too hard to find. 1980, there was another anime, and that one I do have on complete set on these discs.
Awesome.
And this one I have watched all the way through a few years back, and I will be watching it probably in the next 6 months all the way through again because it's one of my all-time favorite anime shows. Well, just all-time favorite shows, really. This show, I first saw some episodes around 2002, 2003. I was living in Australia. We went to the local video rental market, and like growing up in New Zealand, I mean, you get Transformers the movie at the rental store, and you might get some of those dodgy like Tekken the movie and the Fatal Fury movie. They were awful. You got them at the store. There was no Astro Boy because no one knew what the hell Astro Boy was in New Zealand. I mean, some people do, I'm sure, by now. But back when I was a kid, I'd never heard of him. No one knew who he was. But in Australia, this show played on free-tier TV here. So people had seen it. And not only did it play here, it got the official English dub here. And for some bizarre reason, Canada made their own English dub of the same TV show. Something to do with the local laws and having produced a certain amount of Canadian content. So the Canada version is unfortunately inferior. It censors a lot of stuff. It's chopped some of the episodes and has weird voices and changes character names. Whereas the Australian English dub, it's not an Australian, by the way. It's not. They're not going, oh, Mad Max V8. They're not talking like weirdos. It's just the English dub that came here and other territories. That one is excellent. And again, it's on this Madman label that's done a lot of anime since the 90s, basically. But they've been releasing anime on DVD here. This show is fantastic. And where Tezuka wasn't actually happy with the earlier black and white show because of like the low quality of it, and he felt it was compromised, and they had to crank out so many episodes for the network and a stupid pace. This show is really good quality. The animation's better. The storytelling slows down and takes time to have a proper story in each episode. The voice cast is excellent. Just basically everything about it is great. It's one of my favorite shows I've ever watched. And it's still, if you didn't know it was made in 1980, you can put it on now, you would have no idea it was made back then. The quality of it looks fantastic. And it's just such a great show.
And that's seriously high praise. Like if you're telling me it's that good, then I'm
a lot of this was on YouTube
sooner rather than later. Then like I'm definitely going to jump into that. If Johnny's saying it's one of the best shows he's ever watched, then I'm
you get
on board here.
Episodes, they're really varied. You get ones like here, he's rescuing these babies from some kind of accident. You get ones where he's just like going to school and classmates, and it feels like you're watching some kind of kindergarten toddler bullshit. And then there's other episodes where he's fighting some crazy giant robot from the moon or whatever, and he's like, I don't want to fight you, but the other robot's nuts, and he ends up having to like do this crazy punch like Goku through his middle and just destroys him, and it's like really tragic and heartbreaking because Astro Boy doesn't want to fight and ends up getting drawn into battles with these other robots and stuff. So it's really varied in the stories it does. And there's other stuff like Superman where it's like, oh no, there's a tanker that's leaking oil. Quick, get over the Astro Boy and save the people, and typical superhero stuff. So we got another show in 2003. I've also got that one there. That's one here on DVD. And this show is decent. Not as good as the other show, like it. But they did a successful relaunch, at least in the West, of Astro Boy in this time. It was a Game Boy Advance game. There was a PlayStation 2 game as well. And they got a bunch of toys and media. Around this time, there was a bunch of it. It's the only time I've ever seen like Astro Boy toys and it came up was when they did this show relaunch. So it's got good animation, visually looks fantastic, looks really beautiful, good voice cast, but the story beats feel a bit off, and the style of it doesn't, to me, feel as authentic as the 80s one, because the 80s one really goes with the style of the original manga comics. And the themes, I mean, not artwork, but the thematic styles. Whereas this show is like, it's good, but it's like, when you watch a show you really love, and then 10 or 20 years later, they remake it, and you're like, this just it doesn't have the same feel to it. It's not just the older; it's like legitimately the bar is lower and the quality is just not as good. But I've no regrets. I think I picked it up for like $10 one day. So I haven't watched this one all the way through. I watched about half of them. It's still a good. If I'd never seen the other show, I wouldn't know. But the other show is just so good. So by comparison, this one's just okay, just in the middle there. And quite strangely, in 2009, we got a CGI movie, a Japan American production. So it was Japanese animation, but it had all like Western voices. And from the beginning, they plotted it to have a global release. The company Imagi, they also made that 2007 Ninja Turtles CGI movie. And this one was actually like an original story where you've got the character of Astro Boy, but it basically ignores everything that came before. It's a standalone story. You don't need to know anything about the character to watch this movie. And I thought it would be crap. You know, when they take like a Japanese thing and they're, we're going to make an American version, like a Dragon Ball movie. I was like, oh no, it's going to be something bad. I watched this one day on rental and I was like, this is actually good. This is like watching a Pixar movie or a Toy Story, it's really good. And I was so surprised. And there's a bunch of original characters in it. There's a bunch of nods to other Astro Boy characters, like the professor there's on the left there with the big nose and the curly hair. And it's just actually a really excellent film that doesn't tie into any other Astro Boy stuff. It's just a completely original story that ignores a lot of the lore and all that, and probably works for that reason, just being a standalone thing, like the Hellboy movie. You can just watch it and doesn't need to connect to anything else.
There's on the cast here as well. Donald Sutherland.
Kristen Bell is one of the
Charlize Theron.
Same time she's doing the Assassin's Creed voices.
Yeah, that's and once again, this looks vaguely familiar to me, but the thing about this is, I suppose, because they've westernized it a bit more, it does look like your typical kind of Pixar type of deal, where this might have went past me and I wouldn't have even twigged that it was anything based on anything.
Yeah, if I didn't like Astro Boy, I wouldn't have watched it. I'd just go, it's just some stupid kids film. But it was actually quite good. And I mean, if you like films like Robots, I can't remember who made that. If it was Pixar who made that one, but that one was good too. If you like that, then you would like this one.
Yeah, similar type of style.
And it's got story, it's got a bit of tragedy, it's got comedy stuff. It's pretty fun. Like, I've got this on DVD somewhere. Sometimes I forget it even exists. It was just like, oh yeah, they made this back then.
And I'm pleasantly surprised though, because I was kind of, when this one came up in the slide, I was expecting you to say, and then they made some awful modern, but like, look, it's good. That's good that it's actually a hit where it was supposed to.
When they made it, I thought, this will be rubbish. And I kind of watched it out of curiosity just because I love Astro. I thought, this is probably going to be a train wreck. And I was like, it's not a train wreck. And it's actually enjoyable. Better than enjoyable. It's actually good. It's actually a well-made film.
Yeah, being good is good enough, especially in these more modern times. I definitely do. I even I had hopped into my phone there a little notes to go onto YouTube and watch the 1980s show.
Yeah,
it's kind of, I think you've definitely put it on my radar with that praise.
Yeah, I'm going to rewatch them in the next few months. I'm also going to rewatch Gigantor, because there was also, like Astro Boy, Gigantor was made a few years after Astro in black and white, and it was also remade in 1980 with a really high quality animation that's also on YouTube for free.
God bless YouTube and giving us all this stuff. Well,
some of them are on official channels. Some are just random fans that uploaded stuff, and somehow the companies haven't copyright struck them or pulled it down or whatever.
Yeah, well, long may that last also, Look over there, companies. There ain't nothing to see here.
When I found that bloody new Gigantor from 1980 was on there, because I'd started watching that on Amazon on my subscription. See how good it was. And when I was on YouTube, I'm like, straight to the computer, crap, I've got that downloaded now, so I can watch it offline on any of my various computers and TVs in the house.
And that's something, look, we should probably mention a bit more, folks. If you have the ability to do so, if you have the space on your computers, grab some of this stuff while it's floating around for free, because
they can disappear any day.
They can disappear any day. You don't know if something's going to change, whether there's going to be a big crackdown on things. So if you have the ability to do so, I say grab it while you can.
Some company buys the rights to some other company, and all of a sudden they're like, right, anything that's on there, gone overnight.
Yeah, definitely. But it's food for thought. I think even just going on what we were talking about today, I would be more leaning into watching Astro Boy maybe more so than reading it, only because
Oh yeah, I
you
would
kind
totally
of
recommend that show over the comics. Like it's
yeah.
way less confusing. It's like, because in the comics, even though they're roughly in order, a lot of the stories kind of jump around all over the place in the original comics and that. But that's also something Tezuka kind of did. Is Astro is the main character, but sometimes he'll just want him to be in the story for a while, and there'll be a bunch of other characters and stuff going on. He just did all kinds of things. It was very experimental.
Yeah, well, more power to him, if he managed to build something
Occasionally, there's this little
successful.
gag character that pops up and talks to the reader, almost like a narrator. And if you don't know what it's about, you're just like, what is going on?
Like, yeah, break that fourth wall, take you out of it.
Yeah, there's like
Hey, look, you got to try these things.
the thing I found reading all these Astro Boy volumes, it reminded me a lot of like stuff like Outer Limits and Twilight Zone, like the original shows. Just really good science fiction stories. Just really good writing, really interesting themes and stories. And I mean, occasionally fight some crazy giant robot and whatever, but a lot of the time there's like just stupid criminals and gangs and fears about nuclear stuff and this and that, and there's all sorts of like real just human stories in it. And the irony is that like while the humans are being terrible trying to kill each other, this little robot boy is like the most human character in the stories.
Yeah, more human than human.
Yeah. But yeah, slight hint of what we might be talking about next week.
Yeah, getting into some dark territory here. Are we talking Punisher comics? Are we talking Punisher everything?
We'll go comics, I think, because I mean, you can certainly jump around anything Punisher related if you want to talk about the films. But I was thinking we'll do a bit of overview of Punisher, and I might kind of focus in on some of the Garth Ennis stories.
Sounds like an awesome plan to me. I would be curious though for people a little bit more in the know than me, just because of what we spoke about today, whether it be kind of Hellboy or Astro Boy. Funny enough, you kind of have certain perceptions of things. When I was coming into this, I was kind of expecting, I have kind of a general knowledge of Hellboy, and I wouldn't be opposed to kind of looking at more
2
Hellboy
seconds,
stuff.
Pedro's
But I
got enough.
think kind of coming out to the other side of today's show, I'm nearly, not to say that I'm like trying to forget Hellboy or anything, but I'm maybe leaning more towards jumping in on some Astro Boy stuff first, especially if it's easily accessible on YouTube. I think I'm going to maybe jump in on that and try and get in on the ground floor and get a bit of knowledge in the noggin. Hellboy's a little bit different. I might actually try and pick up the first few volumes of those omnibus collections Johnny was showing us earlier.
Yeah, Hellboy is
But
really
yeah,
easy to get into because they're shorter stories, and there's a number of budget price editions around. I got them on sale. I wait for those yearly sales when they were going for like half price.
yeah, I'll try and grab something. But yeah,
And you don't have to
looking forward to the
read a big
Punisher next
chronology. You
episode.
can just like pick a story here and there. You don't have to read like crazy amounts of stuff. You can just enjoy pretty much any old volume of it.
Drop your knowledge in those comments though, folks. Let us know. Gojitron, I'm looking at you. I'm sure you've plenty of Hellboy and Astro Boy knowledge to drop in
Gojitron in
us.
hell.
Yeah. Hopefully, hopefully you haven't put anybody off with our hellish discussion today and use of satanic imagery, and all this Beelzebub and devil talk.
Yeah, get Hellstrom in here, son of
We
Satan.
mix it in though. We mix it up with Japanese robots to try and balance it off a bit.
I need a devil Japanese robot now.
Yeah. We need to bring these two worlds together. Which actually already has been done in Wolfenstein with Mecha Hitler.
Mecha. Yeah, Mecha. Yeah, but Punisher next week, and following week after that, we might have to enjoy some phone acting.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we got phone acting coming out the wazoo when we tackle this film.
Yeah. It's an ultimate phone acting movie, and we're getting in early. It's our Christmas movie this year. Die Hard 1 and 2, Christmas. This one, not so much, but we're getting it in early in December, so we don't miss it.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if it takes place in the summer. It's following
No.
on from 2 Christmas movies, so it falls under the technicalities of it.
There you go. And now Boba Rex has got his little hat on there and his antlers, getting in the spirit.
Yeah, getting into the season, just gotta get the warm thoughts flowing. We gotta rush around New York and stop those bombs before they blow up.
And it was like the last good Die Hard, and like Indiana Jones, 3 good movies. Ignore what came afterwards. It's like,
yeah, when we will be ignoring them, believe me, folks.
Yeah.
Unless you ask for it, unless you say, "Look, Boba Joe, we want you to cover those bad Die Hard movies," in which case we'll
plenty of
might
other
consider
Christmassy things. Daddy's Home with John Lithgow. That's another Christmas movie.
Yeah. Oh, look, we'll never have a shortage of either Christmas or Christmas adjacent or sequels to Christmas movies, to watch. Great fun, though. Great fun as always.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, hanging out with the boys. Not those boys with their terrible swear mouths, the Hellboys and Astro boys and the Boba Joe boys.
Yeah, and maybe we'll get a Hellboy Astro Boy crossover. Maybe there already was one, and I just don't know about it because I'm such a novice.
Yeah, we had a few gaps this year where we had like various technical issues and whatnot, and weather and whatever, and some topics are originally going to be like kind of whole shows. I went, let's just squish them down and do a couple of combo shows to get them out of the way, and do some different stuff next year, some Resident Evils and things. But I thought I just went, boy, they could go together.
Oh, look, we're plenty of topics to come and plenty of topics already done. I will eternally plug our back catalog. You can hear us talk about all types of stuff.
It's another movie versus next year. I can't remember what it is, but you know how we did like Superman 3, RoboCop 3 versus, I think it was Turtles. I've got another one like that where it's like sequel, where it's like there's another movie we'll talk about. It's the good movies, but then these bad sequels. We're going to cram them into one show to do like a versus what's the best of the worst.
Yes, yeah. Battle Royale among the worst offenders.
Loser takes all.
Yeah. And whoever wins, we lose.
That's right. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, folks. Leave a comment, leave a like, and we'll be back next time.
Here, everybody.